Hey there, I'm Tim and welcome back to the official Top Music channel, where we help music teachers build their businesses and teach amazing lessons to their students with free videos each and every week. As always, please click the subscribe button and the bell to make sure you can be notified when we release new videos, and make sure you leave a comment or questions below. I love hearing from you. All right, let's kick it off. So whether or not to do music exams can be a little bit controversial. Now, if you're in the United States, you probably don't really know what we're talking about because they're not very common over there. But in the Commonwealth countries, I'm thinking Canada, United Kingdom, Australia in particular, music exams can be a big focus of music lessons. And traditionally, they've almost been the sole focus of music lessons. But I think that's changing. So there are a lot of great points about music exams. There are a few to be considered as well as possible negatives, depending on how you approach them in your lessons. Okay, let's kick things off with some of the good points about exams. So firstly, it gives the students a sense of achievement. You can tell them how good they are till you're blue in the face, but when they walk into a more formal situation with an unknown person who's a musical specialist, and they actually sit down with them, listen to their playing, and then give them a mark. And it's definitely better than the praise we can give our children as parents because, ultimately we're a bit biased. Examiners, no bias there. So what they get is really clear feedback about how they're going. So the second good thing about music exams is that it provides evidence of a student's progression. And students do like to ask, or think to themselves, even if they don't ask, am I getting better? Am I better now than I was last year or last summer, or whatever it was? And of course, we can show them videos of what their playing was like then compared to now. But for some students, until they see numbers on their piano books or their certificates getting higher, they don't really feel that progression. And it kind of aligns with the fact that, year after year, we have an increase in grades at schools. And so they want to have that same sense of progression in their music learning. So the third point in support of music exams is motivation. There is no doubt that when an exam is on the horizon for a student, they will practice more. And it's much easier for parents as well to get their students to practice when there is an exam coming up, because it's a really clear deadline, it's a really clear expectation of what needs to be done in that amount of time, and it's much easier to get students to actually go to their instrument and do it, particularly when parents have paid, $100 or more sometimes for that exam experience. The students need to step up. Sometimes students do keep motivated themselves as they're progressing through music that they're learning and composing and improvising that they're doing. But for others, that recital or that exam really does give a massive boost to motivation. And sometimes that extra practice can push them over a little bit of a hump to going, actually, I am playing at a pretty good level here. I'm going to keep on doing this. All right, the fourth point in support of music exams is that it can push the student out of their comfort zone. And I'm not just talking about the fact that they've either got to video record themselves or they've got to, put on a nice shirt and rock up to play in front of a complete stranger in some random room. No, what I'm talking about is that the level of dedication required, the precision, the fact that everything needs to be played as written and performed stylistically correctly, pushing students out of their comfort zone will see them become better musicians in the future. So that can be a great thing. And point number 5 in support of music exams is that it introduces students to new pieces and genres. If you have a student that really only wants to play in a certain style or the things they learnt on YouTube or whatever it is, that could be good up to a point, but we want our students to explore a variety of styles and genres in their music, and the more the better. I'm all for a repertoire-rich learning experience. 3 to 4 pieces a year is not enough for a solid education. And so we want to have students playing 10 or 15 pieces at the right grade level before they do an exam. That's a whole nother story. But what I want to say here is that music exams do force students to play in different styles and genres, because generally speaking, most exams will ask students for a piece from the Baroque era, classical era, romantic era, 20th century era. So they're playing across a whole variety of styles. And look, I don't think as a student I would have ever really ventured into Bach if I didn't have to do it for an exam. And now, you know what? I don't actually mind Bach too much. Some people love it, I know. I've always had a tenuous relationship with Bach, but I would have had no idea about fugues and canons and counterpoint and all those great things if I hadn't been exposed to music exams. Students also start to build a bit more of a knowledge of composers and musical history and eras of music. They can learn about new composers, Tchaikovsky's and the Bartoks of the world and things that they would just never have experienced and learned about had they not had that exam opportunity. All right, so let's start talking about some of the bad aspects, potentially, of exams. Now, you may disagree with some of these things, but I've seen these issues come up time and time again. So let's cover those areas. So issue number one are pushy parents. Sometimes because of the way we as parents were taught through the exam system, jumping on the exam express, exam year after year after year, sometimes we expect the same from our children. And so when they go to a music teacher who doesn't follow that same process, we do sometimes get pushy parents saying, why isn't my child doing an exam? When's the next exam coming? Let's go, let's go, let's go. Now, we as music teachers have to educate those parents to say, well, look, hang on, maybe an exam isn't quite right for your child just at the moment. Maybe it is, of course, but perhaps we need to wait. We need to solidify some skills. We need to learn more repertoire. We need to explore more genres, whatever it is. Pushy parents can be a real challenge when it comes to exams. I have a understanding in my studio that if I ever take on a transfer student who has done exams, I will always tell the parents right up, straight away at that first lesson, I'm not going to set your child an exam in the first year of my working with them. Because what I find 100% of the time is that they're never quite ready for whatever that next exam is because they've been on this express. They've done too many exams too fast and they're just operating at the very edge of their technical ability. They need more grounding, they need more background knowledge, they need more exploration. Most of the students go, whew, I'm so glad I can just chill out and enjoy music for a little while without the pressure of exams. So we really have to work as music teachers with those pushy parents to push back and say, hang on a sec, I'm actually the specialist here. I know what I'm doing and maybe exams aren't right for now for your child. But keep in mind that this can definitely be an issue for some teachers. Okay, point number two about why music exams can be a bad thing. And that is if you only teach or have time to teach the exam pieces for that student in that year. As I mentioned earlier, if a student is just learning those 3 to 5 or 6 exam pieces in a year, every single year, they are really missing out on what is truly a musical education. You cannot be a holistic teacher if you're only teaching that number of pieces a year. But when the pressure of exams piles up and the pushy parents get ahead of you and allow you to do this, we can get really stuck in a situation where we know better. We know we should be doing more. We should be doing wider varieties of music and exploring, composing and improvising and all those things, but we just don't have the time. So be aware that that can be a negative, but it doesn't have to be as well. If you set your studio up so that you have the opportunity to teach students at least, let's say, 10 pieces at a particular grade level a year, even if they're not perfected, before you choose, okay, I'm going to choose those 4 pieces for the exam, we're in a completely different place to starting the year and going, oh, okay, wow, we've got to choose 4 pieces and we're going to study them until November and we're going to be examined on them and then we're going to start that whole process again next year. So point number 2 is what I'm trying to say is that depending on how you run your exams in your studio, it can be really limiting on the amount of musical experience a student can get if they only focus on those pieces. So point number 3 about why music exams can potentially be a challenging thing or a bad thing in your studio is, and it flows directly on from point number 2, is that students can start lacking musical knowledge and experience because the focus is on all of that exam content. Now, there are some good things about exams in that they make students do oral tests and sight reading and learn some general knowledge background, maybe do a little bit of improvising. But on the whole, that focus on exam pieces alone can really limit your ability to do things like teach students to play by ear or write a lead sheet or improvise or learn to read lead sheets or to compose or to use GarageBand or whatever it is that they might enjoy doing. The other aspect of this is that for teachers, it can sometimes be an easy route. Teaching from an exam system it is kind of easy teaching in some ways. You don't have to think too much. All the pieces are laid out, all the technical work that's required, it's all there for you. You just need to pick and choose what you do, send the student for the exam. So I find that students or teachers who are running students through exams as a really regular thing can be limited in their skills, I guess, and can really fall into a complacency about what and how they teach. And I don't think that's a good thing for any teacher. Okay, point number 4 about exams and the negative impacts of exams is that it can add a super amount of stress and pressure onto students and their parents and the relationship between the two, and with you for that matter as well. Kids and teenagers have a fair bit of stress from their schoolwork quite often, particularly as they get into higher grades. And they often look to their extracurricular activities like their music as a source of fun and relief from that. Some students, of course, they thrive on that exam pressure, but for a lot of students, that can really push them over the edge. And forcing, obviously, the student to practice because they need to, if they're not committed to this and engaged with it, and they haven't had the autonomy to choose to do this, then we can really be butting heads with students and parents. And that student, parent, teacher triangle can start really being broken apart. And it can be incredibly destructive if it's not dealt with in the right way. You know, wouldn't it be great if practicing an instrument was like the reward after the homework was done? It could be that relaxing. And for some students, of course, it is. Some students who are able to play by ear, play their songs from YouTube that they like, pick up their guitar, sit on their bed, have a play. It can be an incredibly stress relieving situation. That's really what we want for our students. Of course, there's going to be time for focused practice, but we want them to play their instruments and have fun doing it. But again, if that pressure of exams gets too much, it can really be destructive to the student's enjoyment of music, and ultimately they can quit. Okay, the last point that we need to consider about music exams when it comes to the maybe not so positive side of things is a really sad one, and that is that students can feel like they've finished learning when they reach a certain point, most often grade 8, and isn't that tragic? I know of students who do go on this exam express, exam, year after year after year. They get to grade 8 and they finish grade 8 and it's an utter relief. They can finally stop. They can quit. Yes, I've finished music. Isn't that a great thing? And isn't that just the most tragic thing from a teaching perspective? We want these kids to play for the rest of their life and enjoy music in some way, shape or form into adulthood. Isn't it a terrible tragedy if they get to grade 8 and feel like that's the end of music? I can stop now. We don't want that for our students. And so we really need to think about how exams are structured in our students' lives so that that does not happen, because that is a real sad situation. So I hope you've enjoyed that overview of the good and bad about music exams. What do you guys think? I'd really love to know. Leave a comment below and let us know on social media, and I look forward to hearing from you.